Okay, Perek Chaf. The Mishkal HaChasidus. Mishkal HaChasidus is the balance of Chasidus. This is a complex challenge that the Mesilas Yesharim presents to us when we're dealing with Chasidus. Because Chasidus is not Me'ikar Adin, it's not the halacha, right? It's beyond the halacha. It's I'm in love with Hashem and I want to make Him happy. So that brings a certain challenge that the Mesilas Yesharim describes to us. What we must explain right now, mishkal hachasidus hazeh, is the balance of this chasidus. V'hu inyan ikari ma'oid ma'oid. This is a very, very fundamental inyan. Okay, that's exciting. V'teida be'emes shezuhi hamelacha hakosha shebechasidus. This is the hard part of chasidus. If you thought chasidus was the hard part of chasidus, that's not the hard part. Of course, for a person to reach a madrega that his heart and soul are just focused on bringing nachas to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, la'asais nachas ruach liyotzroi, indicates a very high madrega. But that's not what's difficult. Certainly once someone reaches that madrega, they become low, they're desperate to give nachas to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But this Mishkal HaChasidus, this is where things are complicated. Ki dakusai rav ma'od, because it's very subtle. V'yesh liyetzer, but look at these words. The Ramchal himself writing it. V'yesh liyetzer badavar hazeh knisa gedola. The Yetzer Hara has a tremendous entrance there. It's a vulnerable spot. The Yetzer Hara knows that that's our weak spot and he can take advantage of it. And therefore the danger is significant. Ki harbe dvarim toivim yuchal hayetzer l'rachek ki ilu heim roim. There are many good things that the Yetzer Hara could push away as if they're bad. V'harbe chatoim, and there are many sins that the Yetzer Hara could be l'karev, he could draw them close. Ki ilu heim mitzvahs gedolos, as if they are great mitzvahs. For a person to make the right choices in the balance of his chasidus, how much to do, when to pull back, when to do the drisha, when to do the prisha, right? To know how to do that, there's three conditions. There are three things that you need to acquire, and if you could acquire those three things, then there's a tikva that you can manage the balance of chasidus. Let's see what the three things are. Number one, she'iyah liba yashar shebilevavos, that his heart should be straight, the straightest of hearts. Wow, how difficult is that? To have a really, really, really straight heart. I'll tell you what it means. Thank you for asking. I'll tell you what it means. It means that if someone says something to you, hey, I have a great idea. Let's go across town and let's go do chesed to someone. That you will be able to listen to the idea regardless if it was brought to your attention by the person you love most in the world or the person you love least in the world. Because you don't allow your judgment of what the right thing to do be affected by who brought the idea to you. Is that easy to do? That's yashar shebelavavos. I'm thinking straight. When you hear a shita, an idea, isn't it true that sometimes our first thought about the idea is who gave us the idea? Sometimes that makes sense because we trust certain people, but sometimes it's really a matter of bias. Isn't it true? Wouldn't you agree with me? Isn't it true that we tend to judge the people we like more l'kavschus than the people we don't like, even if the reason we don't like them has nothing to do with whether they're a tzaddik or a rasha? Isn't that true? There's biases. I was talking to someone recently. So I've had the last few months, for some reason, HaKadosh Baruch Hu always leads me on very, very, very interesting journeys. And I've long ago given up trying to figure out why he thought that I should be experiencing these fascinating journeys. But one of the interesting things that started about 2 summers ago, but it's picking up in intensity, is for some reason there are Hasidish couples that come to me for advice. Okay? I don't know exactly how it came about. I'm really not sure how it came about. But one thing led to the next. I have 2 Hasidish people coming today here at the Yeshiva with me. Okay? So yeah, there's certain things that I've developed like skills with, but for some reason I'm not a Hasidish dayan. I'm not, it's interesting, no? It's interesting, And these are people. These are like the real intense Hasidim. This is not like, like a Hamish guy, or this is not Joey Newcomb. Okay, these are guys that like they don't speak English well. Okay, like there's a language barrier. Okay, now. It's interesting, Nakuda, okay? Some people absolutely love Hasidim, like myself, for example. And some people have an attitude towards Hasidim that people have towards people that aren't like them. And there's a certain negativity just because they're not like us. And maybe they have certain minhagim or attitudes or a culture that's different than ours, and it's easy to judge a culture that's different than ours. I always talk about it like regarding dating, So in our world, we'll date for a couple of weeks, a couple of months. Usually, that's the norm, right? And then get engaged, right? What did you do? 2.5 months, okay? Okay, I did 2.5 weeks, but okay, that's me. Okay, so now is that quick? Is 2.5 months quick or slow?
Saying it was because of like the situation, we had to like wait a little bit.
Okay, but is it quick or slow?
I guess technically it's quick.
Well, it depends who you ask. I mean, if you ask some people, it's horrifyingly quick. Like if you don't know the girl for a year, how are you supposed to decide if you should get engaged to her? Right? Do we all know people that have that? And for some people, it's horrifyingly slow. I mean, there are many people, Hasidim most notably, that will meet a girl once, like the really, really, really liberal ones will meet twice, and that's it. Seal the deal and not see her till the wedding. Sounds good? Who's right? It's a ridiculous question. We always compare based on what the norm is to us. I had it a few days ago. This is the Alter von Kelm writes about this. He has a name for it. He calls it Machshava HaKeduma. Okay, the first thought. I want to tell you about the Alter von Kelm's first thought. Okay, the crazy thing. You all have this. Okay, you ready for this? You all have this. Okay, you hear a story. You heard what happened. A kid fell by the Yom Tefillah in Israel and died. You heard that story? A kid fell and died. Anybody? Yes. Okay. I heard it was a suicide. And then someone else will say, you'll meet someone, and they'll say, no, it wasn't. I don't know if it was or wasn't, and I don't care. The Sham should have an aliyah. Everyone should have an nechama. The ridiculous thing for me to get involved with. I care that a yid is nifter. That's what I care. But I'm just talking about when you hear a story. That's a story, it's something that catches our attention because it's very tragic. You heard a story, and you heard that's what happened. You're sitting in shul, the guy says, did you hear? I heard that he was pushed. So you say, no, it's not what happened. He killed himself. Right? How do you know that your story is right? Maybe his story is right. You saw it somewhere online, he saw it somewhere online. Do you know the guy? No. You know the family? No. There's a human nature that the first story we hear carries be'etzim, a certain emes to it, and the second story is not true because of the first story. And it's meaningless. Okay? I've had people tell me that stories that were about me, my version wasn't true. Because they heard from someone else first. I met a guy a few weeks ago. He told me, you told me this story, and he got it wrong. I was like, no, it was like that. He goes, no, it wasn't. It was my story. No, there's something called machshava keduma, that the first machshava, the first thought, we accept. It's crazy. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any logical sense. Let me ask you something, parenthetically. Why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu give us that nature? Yeah, to allow us to be mechanech our children. Because or else life would just be insane. So we're confident in our Messiah. We have a child, and we teach that child Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, and that becomes the machshava keduma. Can it be uprooted and questioned? Of course, but at least there's a tendency that that's my go-to thing. That's what I accept. Hashem gave it to us to use positively, but it's easy for it to be distorted. So Memela, I was talking about the Hasidim, right? So I live this life. So when I look at Hasidim, I'm like, well, they're crazy. They go to the mikveh every day. Okay, they're probably Hasidic guys sitting around saying these Litvaks are crazy. They never go to the mikveh. What was your first machshava? How were you raised? The Hasidim know how to cram into a room. You ever noticed that? They know how to crowd in, So we're like, whoa, give me a little personal space. Hasidim are like, it's crazy, these Litvish guys. You have to talk to them across the room. It all depends on where you come from, where you were raised. There's not an objective truth here. There's only one objective truth in the world, and we're looking at it. It's the Torah. But otherwise, not an object. There's different cultures. There's different ways. There's different ways of doing things. We're like, it's not a matter of judgment. It's not like that. But still, do you know people that have biases? People have biases against Fardim. People have biases against Ashkenazim. People have biases against Hasidim. People have these biases, which is crazy because we're such a small nation. We're such a small nation, as it is, the whole world has biases against us, and they don't care if we're Hasidish or not. We should stop wasting our time with the silly biases, which the big difference is what kind of hat we wear. It's really, really, really time to give it up, no? But I was thinking about it. When you're talking about straight mind. So, when you have couples, let's say, any of you are doing psychology? Psychology, social work? Anyone? Anyone going for psychology or social work? Okay. So when you're seeing people come to you. Okay, so let's say you're a psychologist, social worker. What are you going for?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, let's say psychologist. Okay, I'll make you a psychologist. Okay, let's say. Okay, and you have couples coming to you in crisis. Okay, so are you seeing the most incredible part of Klal Yisrael? So there's an argument to be made that you are not. Obviously, if people are okay, they're not coming to you. It's like a cardiologist telling you, it's crazy, all Jews have heart problems. All day I see people with heart problems. It's crazy. Yeah, because you're a cardiologist. You hear what I'm saying, right? So if a psychologist has people coming in and like, it's crazy what's happening to Klal Yisrael. They're all messed up. Yeah, you're a psychologist. If you hadn't put out a shingle that you're a psychologist, if you would have said you're an interior designer, you might have met a different demographic of people. Okay? So I was telling someone who's like in the field a little bit, I was telling someone that I've seen a bunch of Hasidic couples. So he says, wow, the Hasidic community is really messed up. And that's what I mean about, that's not straight thinking. And I told him that if he wants to think that way, maybe there's a flip side to that. Maybe the Hasidic world is really courageous. That they are prepared to go to the other ends of the earth to make sure that they're healthy. What about that? There's a thing that so like addiction is a big thing in this world, okay? I've been dealing with addictions for 20 years, over 20 years. And I've been to rehabs, I've been to AA meetings, I never stayed in rehab, just to clarify. I visited rehabs, and I've been in touch with a lot. I've sat with a guy with his GA sponsor, that's for gamblers, a lot of different stuff, okay? And the word on the street is that there's a lot of frum guys, it's called program. There's a lot of frum guys in program, in 12-step programs, a lot of frum guys. The frum world is messed up. No, the rest of the world is not in program. They're running around wild with their addictions, and they're not saying, this is not who I am. This is not who I want to be. I want to get help. They're not doing that. I'm saying a lot of people are, but you know, you have to, but this, Ethan, this is what I mean when the Mesilas Yesharim says that a person needs his heart to be Yashar Shebel, you asked me, right? Yashar Shebel Lavav, it's a straight heart. It means not to have these silly biases, and some of them could be very deep. We could have biases that we don't know where they came from because they came from comments that we heard when we were young and we don't even remember the comments, but it just caused us to have certain biases. You know, it's you know, people have a bias, let's say. People have a bias that yeshivish people are not emotionally nuanced. It's a bias. There are people around this table, I'm sure, that grew up feeling that way, being told that, thinking that, and then every time they met a yeshivish guy, it was a confirmation bias, you know? Every time you were pushed in the street by a yeshivish guy, like, I see? You see that? You know? I'll tell you, it's not true. I can tell you it's not true. I've sat with many, many yeshivish people that are not just incredibly emotionally nuanced, but incredibly articulate about their emotional nuance. It's not even a secret. They talk that way. Yes, in Lakewood, when they're not learning, which is not often, Baruch Hashem, they will talk about feelings and emotions and a life's journey in a way that is articulate. It's awful. Is there an element that, you know, yeah, is there an element like that at this yeshiva? Is there an element like that in every yeshiva? Yes. But we create bias. I'm just speaking about biases that maybe some people here grew up with a certain bias. It's just a bias. It's just an absolute bias. You get to know these people, it's not true. It's not true. You know, when I'm working with these Hasidic couples, I'm always blown away again. For some reason, I grew up with a bias. The Hasidic marriages are not like, they don't really like love each other. Whatever, you know. After all, they only met each other once or twice before they got married. That's the bias I grew up with. I have a feeling I'm not the only one by this table that grew up with that bias. But I can be made Kinea Aiden with absolute certainty. I can tell you with 100% clarity and certainty that it's absolutely not true. Because even the couples that I meet that are in crisis have incredibly robust, romantic, strong marriages. The first time I encountered it, I gave myself a Musa Shmuz. Where'd you get that bias from? Just because they walk in the street with tremendous sneers, that means that behind closed doors, they don't have robust, amazing, helpful, supportive relationships? It's a sheker. It's an absolute sheker. But we don't have the Yashar Shebel Levavos. We allow our biases to affect us. How beneficial would it be for us if we work on that? If when we meet people, we have an open mind and we see them for who they are. Can you imagine? How much more healthy will our Shabbos tables be when we're schmoozing by the Shabbos tables and we have young children, that we don't pass our biases over to our children, that they have open minds. Don't you want your child to be wandering around Yerushalayim one day and just saying, wow, so many different kinds of Yidden, I'm so lucky to be a Jew? Don't you want that? The way to do that is to have a Shabbos table that imparts that. Everyone's different. There's a certain thing of Yashar Shebel Levavos. There's another element of Yashar Shebel Levavos, and that's the incredible amount that we're biased about ourselves. And that's Sugya, Rabbi says, for another time. Yirtzeh Hashem, next time, we'll talk about the other part of Yashar Shebel Levavos. Today we spoke about Yashar Shebel Levavos externally. Be'ezer Hashem, next time we'll talk about the harder Sugya of Yashar Shebel Levavos internally.